Hello, friends. Welcome back to 1D10T Does Stuff, and I'm the 1D10T in question, Trevor Stewart 1308. And today, because we are having some problems with our new cameras, yeah, I understand that. Just Me Crystal. Just Me Crystal says, had I consulted before getting what I got, I would be in a better position. You know, I'm thinking I might have too. But, I don't know. I did what I did. We'll see how it works out. I might go drop the other whatever I gotta drop to get a different one. So, in any case, instead of reading More Inflamed by Rupa Marya and Raj Patel, we're going to be watching some videos today. One that I particularly wanted to watch, haven't watched yet, want to watch and react to, by Leisha Miller on YouTube. The video is called America's Education System is Doomed. And it's because it's going to be about our new education secretary. I don't know what her first name is off the top of my head. I thought it was Linda, but it might not be. But it's Vince McMahon's daughter. Vince McMahon of WWE, WWF, got body slammed by Trump. Ugh, that's sad. That Vince McMahon. Same Vince McMahon who has been steadily exploiting human bodies for the past 40 years, something like that. Yeah, that Vince McMahon, his daughter. But before we get into all of this, the nice thing, by the way, about Leisha Miller is she keeps it light. She makes a lot of good jokes. I appreciate her sense of humor. But, you know, before we get rolling, let's shout out the provider of today's pre-rolls, The Hidden Leaf, downtown Charlottesville, on the Downtown Mall, 105 West Main Street, above the Bricks, Suite 200. Between 10,000 Villages and Hamilton's. A great place to go with some great buds to get some great buds, eh, bud? And really, the only thing better than their bud is their customer service. They also have the lowest prices in town, according to my own personal research, which is, let's face it, highly, highly biased. That is to say, I was very high when I did my biased research. I'm glad you like that one, Crystal. Don't forget to check the website for times and events. The website is thehiddenleafseville.com. That's thehiddenleafseville, all one word, .com. And a note of disclosure, we very seriously endorse them and what they're trying to do. They're trying to build community here, and make a safe third place for everybody to go hang out and exchange ideas. But we are a relatively opinionated group of people here at this channel, at these channels, and our opinions are ours alone. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any of our sponsors or any of the providers of our goods, such as the pre-rolls, the hoodies. The hoodies for under $40, by the way. Incredibly comfy, styling, inexpensive. But yeah, we endorse them. They do not necessarily endorse us or our opinions. That pardon me. That includes Firehouse Organics Craft Cannabis Farm, who we also endorse highly, as well as Kush Gang, the makers of Drip and Kush Juice, who we also endorse highly. Yes, I believe those are all of the notes of disclosure and the like. All right. Well, let's see what I've got up on the dock. Now, as you can see, actually, my top 4 videos look like they could all be a lot of fun to watch. I really enjoy Anna Marie Forcino. She's always fun and funny. And this Jessie Gender video, though, why we criticize the powerless instead of the powerful. This looks interesting. It appears to be, I'm not sure, but it appears like it might be a commentary on the recent missteps of the Young Turks. But this video, Americans' Education System is Doomed by Alicia Miller, is the one we're going to start with.
Why is everyone spiraling over YouTube banning ad blockers? Like, chill guys, just use Pi. It's a free Chrome extension that's actually made by one.
Breaking news, America's students have gone feral, and those are their teachers' words, not mine. America's youth can't read, don't pay attention, and aren't sorry about it. In short, the kids are not all right. And though we'd be wise to listen to the hordes of burnt-out teachers who've been screaming warnings into the void since long before COVID, this is America, where we like to wait until our canaries have all gone silent before getting the out of the coal mine. For the best educators, teaching is more of a calling than a job, which explains why they bothered entering the profession despite knowing they'd face daily frustrations like the low wages, micromanaging administrators, and infuriating parents that have become hallmarks of the profession. But it seems we've reached a breaking point for teachers and students. Turnover is rampant. Fewer people are being...
This does reflect what I'm hearing from both from what I'm hearing from Trillhalla. You know, that there's a lot of that it's very hard to manage the children because there's no structures in place for it anymore. A lot of those structures have been dismantled. I have a feeling that it's not the same for Cat. Whoo! Don't forget your ASOC prod, Trev. I have a feeling it's not the same for Cat. Although she does have to deal with some of it. I mean, if you guys remember hearing about how they were having a hard time because a lot of children have been told that they're so special And, you know, it's not like I'm not gonna tell baby Z that he's the most special thing in the world to me and to his mom. But, you know, through their warnings, I think I'm gonna try and make it clear that I'm, again, very biased. Of course, he's the greatest thing in the world to me because I love him. You know. My parents, I feel like my parents didn't do a great job walking that line. It's sort of, instead of feeling like I was special in anybody's eyes, I kind of felt like I wasn't special, or I never felt like I was special in everybody's eyes. I had a hard time feeling like I was special in anybody's eyes. And most of the times when I was lauded as special, it wasn't for anything that I had done myself. It was for a role that I played in the family. And that role was being the peacemaker between my father and his father. And that wasn't an accomplishment on my part. I didn't do anything there. I just was born. So the awareness that that's also not entirely true, because my mother did imbue me with a sense of terrible purpose for my life. And that is also not a great way to feel special. You know? Yeah, I feel special, but it's not going to be in a good way. You know? The other ways that society treated me as... that I was treated as special or different was because I was pulled out of class and made to go to the special education classes. I was self-aware enough and smart enough to know that I was being sent to the classes, taken out of class for regular kids and being sent to the class for kids who aren't smart. And I was aware that there was a serious dichotomy of expectation and treatment. I was treated and I was treated as if I was a slow kid. Not to say that, in my own estimation, I should have been. I was a slow kid. But I was expected to be one of those, like, so smart that they look slow kids. And I wasn't. I was just slow. I wasn't abnormally slow. I shouldn't have been taken out of class and put in these special education classes. You know, ostensibly they said it would help me achieve better if I was, you know... It was a bizarre... There was a bizarre set of mixed messages put upon me as a child. Especially around school. So, we've made it 43 seconds into the video and I've already had a long personal discussion about myself in school. It's going to be one of those videos. I don't go to therapy. This is my therapy. I'm sorry, guys.
Certified in the profession each year than are retiring. Schools are chronically understaffed. Students are disengaged and insulated from consequences. Mass shooter drills and the threat of real violence they imply are a fact
Thank
of
you,
life.
Crystal.
And starting next year, the person who will be at the helm of it all has more experience in the wrestling ring than in the classroom and is hell-bent on dismantling all of it. Today, we're exploring why teachers are fleeing the classroom and what's going to happen once Trump's in charge. Let's get into it. With the election season behind us, it's understandable to feel fatigued from the constant media cycle. But now more than ever, it's critical to understand media biases in order to make sense of the issues that'll shape our future. Media literacy isn't just a skill for adults, it's something we should be teaching
I
in
agree
schools
with
so
her.
that young people can critically engage with the headlines they see. For example, look at this recent headline. Federal judge blocks Louisiana law that requires classrooms to display 10 commandments. Ground News compiled over 200 articles on this story. You can also follow this story on ground.news/Legia or scan the QR code. Left-leaning MSNBC uses the headline, 10 Commandments case could give Supreme Court another precedent to overturn. Whereas right-leaning WNG uses the headline, Judge blocks 10 Commandments from Louisiana classrooms. This subtle shift in language
We're gonna
creates two
speed
different
this
narratives,
up
with MSNBC
just a
framing
little
the
bit.
decision as a constitutional ruling and WNG as a moral deprivation. Today's partner
Just
Ground
so
News
that
has been my
we
go-to tool for over a year
seem
now for
like
staying
we're
informed and improving my own
less
media literacy. They make it
using
easy to evaluate
their
news beyond the headlines with features
media
like the
for
bias distribution of
ours.
sources covering each story, the overall factuality rating, and the ownership breakdown, showing that only about 9% of sources covering this story are independent. These features aren't just about understanding this one story. They're about building a habit of questioning and analyzing stories you consume, helping you become more aware of your own
I
echo chamber.
really want to
My
get
favorite
Ground
feature at the moment is their
News.
blind spot feed. With a bird's eye view of
I'm
issues
really
that tend to get more
interested
attention from the
in
left or
getting
right than
Ground
others.
News.
Seeing these blind spots is a powerful way to understand the narrative
So-
shaping public perception and keeping us grounded in
And
reality.
I would
as we process
actually
ongoing
love
issues.
to
The
get
vantage point that I use makes it easier to cut through the
get
noise and see
a,
where narratives diverge, revealing biases that might otherwise go unnoticed. For unlimited access to
partnership
these
with
features,
them.
scan my QR code, click the link in the description, and
I'd
go to
love to have
ground.news/Legia for 50% off the Vantage plan,
you
bringing it to
know,
about $5 a month.
be
It's the best deal of the year, and subscribing
a
not only supports my
sponsor
channel, but also backs
of
an
the
independent team
channel.
dedicated to media transparency. Thanks, Ground News.
Just because.
Education is key to a thriving society. Studies have shown that graduates with access to quality education through primary and secondary school are more likely to find gainful employment, have stable families, and become productive and engaged citizens. They're also less likely to commit serious crimes, less likely to place high demands on the public healthcare system, and less likely to be enrolled in welfare assistance programs. Investing in public education now is far more cost-effective than footing the bill for the social and economic consequences of underfunded, low-quality schools. But it's great teachers that really make a difference in educational outcomes. Studies indicate that teachers are the single most significant factor impacting student achievement, more than services, facilities, or administrative leadership. When teachers are enthusiastic, motivated, and passionate, students are more likely to be engaged and motivated to learn. But if students perceive that their instructor has disengaged from the lesson, they're likely to disengage as well. You've probably experienced this yourself. I had a science teacher in 9th grade who was so checked out that he was using projector slides from the 1970s. I did get to watch a lot of Bill Nye the Science Guy, though, but I was also equally checked out. But despite their enormous importance, teachers don't get the support they need, and they haven't for a pretty long time. In an episode from a while ago, we talked about the many ways conservatives sabotage public schools, including by interfering with curriculum, tying federal funding to standardized test scores, and waging a cultural war on expertise. Teachers were already fighting to persevere through these major challenges, and then COVID came along and said, hold my beer. According to a recent Pew survey, the vast majority of teachers, 82%, said that schools are worse off than they were pre-pandemic and predicted an even steeper decline in the 5 years ahead. This, even though public K-12 spending has been trending upward nationwide. We're actually spending more money per student per year than ever before, just apparently not on things that would improve outcomes. For example, paying teachers what they're worth. And let me be clear, the answer to this high spending despite low outcomes problem is not to get rid of the spending altogether, as conservatives would have you believe. It's to be more strategic with the money we are spending, including paying teachers enough to make it worth their time to enter the profession to begin with, and to give them the bandwidth to give all that they give of themselves to this job. Teachers, much like nonprofit workers and artists, are subject to hefty passion taxes. A passion tax, also known as enthusiasm exploitation, refers to an employer's expectation that a worker will accept lower wages and worse conditions to do a job they love. But passion doesn't pay the bills, you know what I mean? In 2022, teachers earned 74 cents on the dollar
Preach
compared
on.
Workers with similar levels of education, and more than half of those public school teachers had master's degrees. In addition to making less than other comparably educated professionals, teachers' salaries also grow at slower rates than the workforce as a whole. In January 2018, the average teacher salary was about 3% less than the average salary for all other workers in the country. By October 2023, the pay gap had widened to 8%. A 2021 study calculated that raising teachers' base pay to 6 figures for effective teachers could help address public education's teacher shortage crisis. Determining a teacher's effectiveness is another can of worms, but even still, higher base pay has been proven to deepen student learning, reduce dropout rates, and narrow the achievement gap between white students and students of color. Raising base pay also curbs teacher turnover, ensuring that quality teachers remain in their classrooms instead of abandoning them in search of more lucrative jobs that don't involve regular active shooter drills. Raising the average teacher salary to 6 figures nationwide would require about 35.
I just want to stop and say that if your job includes regular active shooter drills, then maybe it's time to look for a new job. I'm just saying. So yeah. This is going at high speed, so keeping up with what we're getting is going to be a little difficult, but that about... I'm amazed that they are spending that much, because from the other side of it, it's like, where is that money going? Because it isn't going towards teachers, and I know that. And, like, my shout for more money for the schools, invest in education, well, they are, but they're not investing wisely in education, and I'm really curious as to where the money's going. It is interesting to me. Now, I think that Leisha might be able to answer that question for us, and do I think that she might have an answer for that question a bit later in the video? Probably. By the way, her Reagan t-shirts, I'm all about it. I gotta get me one of those at some point. I really want to stop and also comment on this, rewriting of Reagan as at worst ineffective, but at best a good president. He was not. He was not at worst ineffective. He wasn't at best ineffective. He was effective at being destructive. He did what he was trying to do, which was enact destructive and repressive destructive and repressive laws and push for restrictive norms, but also push for an economic model that did not benefit the middle class or the poor. It distinctly benefited rich people. And was not a viable economic or not a stable and, in my opinion, viable economic model, because as we saw in the late 80s and early 90s, it fell apart and we landed in a massive recession that was a lot closer to a depression. And the only reason it wasn't called a depression, I think, yes, in their pockets, Crystal. The only reason it wasn't called a depression in those days, the reason it was called a recession, was because white people weren't losing their jobs en masse. white people were just not getting paid as much, you know, having to go for longer without raises, but white people weren't losing their jobs. And yeah, it was an interesting time. And Reagan really screwed people over. I mean, that's just that's what happened. All right, back to the video.
$1,000 additional dollars per teacher per year. The U.S. employs more than 3 million public school teachers, making the total cost of that increase more than $100 billion per year. And this sounds like a lot until you realize that we're spending about $100 billion on Medicare every 5.5 weeks. The Pentagon's budget is over $800 billion per year, and they don't seem to know where a lot of that budget goes, given they haven't passed an audit in 7 years. And the Biden administration set aside $122 billion in American Rescue Plan elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds to eliminate educator shortages. We could come up with the money if we wanted to. It's not really about the cash, it's about our priorities. And for the past 50 plus years, conservatives have prioritized the systemic erosion of our public education system, and undermining teachers has been a major part of that work. Conservatives have spent decades painting higher education and anyone shaped by it as the enemy, including public school teachers, who, as we just covered, are a particularly educated bunch. By painting teachers as a bunch of Marxists hell-bent on indoctrinating innocent youths with woke nightmares like critical race theory and radical gay stuff, conservatives have gradually but systematically undermined teachers' authority, expertise, and independence. No Child Left Behind, the George W. Bush administration's program that tied federal funding to standardized test scores, saw teachers' classroom autonomy eroded and their expertise overruled by administrators more interested in statistics than truth. And since graduation rate is another success metric for...
That did a lot of damage. No Child Left Behind did a lot of damage. And, you know, and it set up this no-fail system. This system where instead of failing kids and making them actually learn so that they can, you know, no one fails, they just all get pushed through, you know, and they teach to this standardized test so that the test scores get high and people get pushed through to graduate. And it's really damaged the ability of teachers to do their jobs and ultimately enforce classroom stability too. It's almost impossible for them to enforce classroom stability. From what Trilhala says, you know, the kids are just kind of like, I really don't care what you say, you know, you can't really do anything to me. And God's bless her, she is capable of putting the fear of dog in those little snots, but it's only because she has the personality for it. Yeah, they've been pushing kids through for some time now. Yeah. And I think it started with W and went through with HW. I mean, it was starting when I was in school. I could see the disparity between my education and the education of those around me who went to public schools. And it was pretty sad. It was pretty sad to me. At the time, I didn't understand what would mitigate that, but I think I'm beginning to get some idea. I experienced it with my nephew and wanted to question but did not have the ability to, looking at the grades on his work and the grades on his report card. You know, yeah, it's a shame that you didn't have the ability to go to someone and be like, hey, why is it like this? Like, what's this about? You know? They have to have certain numbers to get fundings. Yeah, they do. They have to have certain numbers to get fundings. Crystal, you are 100% right. And that's what Leisha is in the middle of saying. And that is a terribly dangerous way to do it. I disagree with that at its core. I feel like education oversight is important, but it shouldn't be tied to the funding. You know? There should be discretionary funds at state levels for districts that aren't doing as well. Like, districts that don't do as well should get more funding. But the metric of how students are doing really ought to be an exit poll. Kids get to take get to fill out a performance review. Yeah, I think kids should get to fill out performance reviews on their teachers. I think that, you know, maybe it should be a high school thing. Maybe even like junior and senior year, you get to fill out performance reviews on your teachers. But senior year, see, I'd think so. Because I think when I was a senior in high school, I still had a pretty good memory of everything that had happened to me in high school. And I would have been capable of saying, okay, you know, these teachers weren't okay, these teachers were. So yeah, senior year. Yeah, senior year. You get to, you know, as part of a graduation, when you graduate, you hand in your 4-year performance review of the school. You know, yeah. And I think that you would see, yeah. Because, I mean, the students, okay, if we look at this like a business, which is always a mistake, the students are the clients. They're not the product, they're the client. Right? A lot of schools see students as the product. Information and learning is the product. It's a service, not a good. And the service is teaching. The clients are the students, so you're teaching the students, and the service that you're teaching them is how to learn. Even though at that time you're also using learning as a method of, you're using information acquisition as a method of teaching how to learn. And that's kind of how my high school approached it. my high school saw it very much in those terms. But my high school was also independent, and they needed, they got their funding from the students' families. So the students and their families were seen as the clients. Which I think may seem like a subtle change in in wording, but it's a huge change in perspective. All right. Let's see what else Legion Miller has to say. Oh, let's make sure to click this. And even though there are over 1,000 comments, I'm still going to So, here is, as friends, capital F friends, as my set, my crew, friends. By the way, our hand signal, our hand sign, like when you want to throw up for your set, this is the hand sign. Either hand. It's F in sign language, and you throw it up like this because it's capital. And we are friends. Because we're all friends here. So your homework as friends is, next time you watch a YouTube video that you really agree with, that really hits you in the heart, that makes you think anything, like that helps you, something that you just, even if you don't know what else to say, don't have any other thing to say to them about it, especially if they're under 1,000 comments, leave a comment of positive support. Those words, comment of positive support. I want that to start being a thing around the internet. I want us to start being anti-trolls. Anytime you can, anytime you think it can be seen even a little bit, just leave a comment of positive support. Because that's what we do here. That's what we are. As friends, we are anti-trolls. We go around spreading just a little bit of love wherever we can. And Crystal, that's why you fit in so well. And that's why I just absolutely, that's why I just love you so much, is that's what you do. And that's why I feel so comfortable with your God's Many Blessings crew. It may not be my God, but it is a God of love. And I am comfortable with that. And you guys go out there spreading God's many blessings, and it is a beautiful thing. Amen. Amen, sister. See, that's one of the things that you bring to the table. Is you bring that positive attitude to the table. And it is, you are not pushy at all, Crystal. You are not pushy at all. I love you in every way that you are, and you are not pushy at all. That being said, there needs to be room in the world for pushy women. There needs to be room in the world for women who do push back. So, even if you are pushy, Crystal, is good. It's a good thing. And that should be celebrated. I don't see you as pushy. But if you are, that should be celebrated because that's needed in this world. There needs to be room, especially for black women, but for all women, to be loud, to push back, to stand up for what they feel, for their rights and their well-being. You are not toxic, Crystal. You are non-toxic. You are safe to consume. You are 100% safe for human consumption. If somebody called you toxic about it, they need to have a little look inside on their end, I think. It is, yeah. Too many black women get told that they're toxic or loud or pushy. Toxic positivity. I'm not going to say that there isn't such a thing as toxic positivity, but like, it's pretty extreme. Toxic positivity is pretty extreme. You know, choosing to be positive in the face of a very negative world is not toxic positivity. It's struggling to stay alive. You know, not everybody wants positivity shown their way, but that doesn't mean that those of us who are positive shouldn't be shining our positivity out there. If you don't want my positivity, then leave me alone. Yes, we are in ad break. I need to check something real quick too. I'm going to visit Trilhala later on, and I need to let her know what my time frame looks like. It's 1 o'clock now. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, you know, I think also people who don't... I'm going to be careful about what I say about this because I don't know the situations. And a lot of this is situational. But in general, I feel like people who want to tell us that we're being too positive are people that don't like seeing us happy. You know, people who don't like seeing our genuine positivity are people that don't like seeing us happy, and that might not be a healthy thing on their end, you know? It runs hand in hand with people who want you to be happy when you're not, and perform happiness when that's not how you feel. And it's also possible to perform positivity when you're not feeling happy. They are not mutually inclusive or mutually exclusive. You know, one is internal, one is external. And even when I'm not feeling good, not feeling happy, not feeling positive inside, I know that I can still go out there and spread positivity. I also know that when I'm not feeling it inside, there's personal work to do, and I go and I do that personal work. You know, I accept that there are negative feelings and that I get them. Important. Exactly. Just me, Crystal. That is exactly it. I try my best because I have many rough days. That is exactly right. You know, I celebrate every little victory, every little positivity, because I have had so many negativities, and I still have so many negativities. And so I celebrate the little positivities just to help me get there. You know? Every smile, every little smile I have is worth, it's a little celebration. It's worth celebrating every time I smile. And sometimes at my darkest moments, I've said to myself, if I can find a smile, in myself, I can find hope. And if I have hope, I will make it. Much love and light to you too, Crystal. Much love and light to you always. And don't you know, I've always managed to make myself smile at least a little. And part of this is because... Oh, thank you, Crystal. Thank you. It means a lot. Crystal says you are so very strong. I wouldn't say that. I don't say that about myself. Because from the inside, it doesn't look like it. From the inside... And I believe this to be true of many strong people. And I believe that you're very strong as well, Crystal. I really do. I believe you've got the strength inside of you. And I believe that on the inside, it doesn't look like strength. It looks like frantically trying to hold together everything. Only occasionally do you have a moment where all of a sudden it's calm and you take a deep breath and you look at yourself and you go, oh my God, I am strong. I'm making it. I'm holding myself together. Even if the world outside of my body is still falling apart, I'm holding myself together. A lot of this is because I do like and love myself. And I've done the work to go inside, and I work on making the decisions on a daily basis that keep me liking myself. You know, liking yourself and loving yourself are both, they're not static. It's not just something that is. You have to, every day, you have to make decisions that you like. Oh, that's wonderful, Crystal. Had a church member who didn't want you to be alone on Thanksgiving and invited you to join them for dinner. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I secured some quality content for Thanksgiving. I am hopefully I'm going to have food that is not Thanksgiving food. I'm going to have immigrant food for dinner. And we're going to discuss the foods and where they come on stream, by the way. We're going to discuss the foods, where they come from, and some of their history. And hopefully I'm going to have an interview with some people about the dangers of colonialism and the pain that colonization may have caused people throughout history. And I think I'm going to try to see if they have anything to say about the importance of the foods that I'm going to be trying. Some of the foods that I'm going to be trying. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. But now that we're all back from ads and done all this talking, we should really get back to the video. You know, I'm pretty sure that with this much talking in between, this is fair use range and can go on YouTube. Don't be sorry, Crystal. It's not you, it's me. I'm the one who's getting distracted and talking, not you. And I'm really doing it so that I'm in fair use range and can throw this up on YouTube this afternoon.
For schools, teachers are rarely allowed to fail a student or make them repeat the year. So they just keep getting pushed
right
to the
there.
next grade and then the next grade. And that's how the U.S. ended up with 19% illiteracy among high school graduates. Nearly 20% of the kids graduating from high school are illiterate in the United States. 21% of adults in the U.S., fully 1/5, read below a 5th grade reading level. 5th graders are 11 years old, for the record. As a former
when I
gifted
was
and
in
talented
5th
student,
grade,
I was reading at a 5th grade level in 2nd grade. So you're telling me that there are 41-year-olds out here who can't read any better than a gifted and talented 8-year-old? In response to being micromanaged by bad metrics in the wake of No Child Left Behind, educator job satisfaction plummeted. Between 2008 and 2019, the number of new teachers completing traditional training programs dropped by more than a third, and the steepest declines were in areas with the greatest need for instructors, including bilingual education, science, math, and special ed. And when you listen to teachers talking about their experiences in the classroom, which is one of my favorite TikTok subgenres, it's not hard to understand why fewer than 1 in 5 Americans surveyed in 2022 said they would ever encourage a young person to become a K-12 teacher. Facing chronic staffing shortages and a lack of trained teachers, states are ushering unqualified randos into the classroom. Arizona, Florida, and Oklahoma have all lifted the requirement that teachers hold a bachelor's degree. In 2015, the Texas legislature passed a law allowing most schools to hire uncertified teachers. Supposedly, the idea was to empower retired professionals like doctors and mathematicians to help address the perennial teacher shortage. Instead, recruiting untrained outsiders has become a pillar of the state's hiring strategy. In 2024, more than half of all public school students in Texas were taught by uncertified teachers.
Even
though
Deadpan
research has shown
Dog
that
didn't agree with
unregulated
this
hiring
crap.
practices tend to backfire on students, and that those consequences disproportionately affect Black students, English learners, and rural students. Underprepared teachers are more likely to quit, which has a negative impact on students.
All right, I am actually surprised by some of this information. I am surprised by how bad it is, how bad it was then. I mean, I knew it was bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, this is another level of, oh, wow, that's awful.
Students' academic achievement, especially in middle and high school math, already a consistently understaffed subject. A recent study found that middle and high school students who were taught math by an unqualified first-time teacher experienced learning losses equivalent to missing 3 months of instruction. So students could lose a full third of a 9-month school year with just one unqualified hire. In 2024, more than 365,000 teachers across the U.S., and that's just from the states that reported their numbers, weren't fully certified for their teaching assignments. And in many cases, uncertified teachers get the same pay and benefits as their certified peers, begging the question, why bother get training at all?
Wait.
Lowering the barriers to entry for educators sounds like a way to democratize teaching, but is really just another band-aid solution that will further erode the already shriveling pipeline of qualified teachers in the long run. Charter schools...
What the what? I mean, no, I can't be that surprised by this. I was aware of something similar to this. A friend tried to get me to go teach at Orange County High School. And, and he was like, yeah, no, your arrest record doesn't matter. They won't need qualifications. It's like, no, I don't want to, I mean, for one, I don't want to teach at that hellscape. Hexscape, I'm sorry. I don't want to teach in that hexscape. That's not my hexscape. I escaped that hexscape. I got out of there. I don't see me being a good teacher for that high school. I was running the risk of getting expelled for fighting. I mean, you know how many fights you got to get into in the 80s in elementary school to get expelled? I don't think I have the temperament for teaching in that county. Even though I have a handle on my temper, I don't think I have the temperament. Not that county. Oy vey.
have also helped normalize the presence of uncertified teachers in the classroom. Charter schools are private, for-profit institutions that siphon off government funding that would otherwise go to public schools, and yet they're not held to the standards that public schools are. School vouchers allow
where the money is going?
students to divert education tax dollars away from public schools to help subsidize the tuition of the private, religious, or homeschool of their choosing.
That's where the money is going.
The largest school voucher program in the history of education, allowing any parent in the state, no matter how affluent, to cash in on a taxpayer-funded voucher with up to tens of thousands of dollars to spend on anything from private school tuition to extracurricular programs to homeschooling supplies. So rich families who could otherwise afford to send their kids to whatever private school they wanted are receiving government vouchers, handouts, some might say, not me, but some, to send their rich kids to expensive private schools on the government's dime. This year, Arizona faced a $1.4 billion budget deficit, much of which was tied to new voucher spending. Make it make sense. Private schools, religious schools, homeschools, and charter schools all operate independently of established state school regulations and oversight.
Okay, now, a lot of I think you still need to have some sort of you need to follow some sort of state guidelines to get accreditation, or maybe it's some sort of national guidelines to get accreditation so that colleges will accept your transcripts as valid. Although that might have changed. But also, this does explain where a lot of money is going. And I'm not gonna malign independent and private schools, or necessarily charter schools. But, for one, I do believe that there should be. I do believe there should be assistance to sending children to private schools. But I also think that public schools should be at the level that you don't need to send your kids to private school. That the education they receive at public school is on par with any that they'd receive in private school. You know? And that way you don't really need to subsidize private schooling or charter or religious schooling. You know? And if parents want to send their kids to religious schools, I'm sorry, but I don't think the taxpayer should have to foot that bill. I really, in any way. I think that there are other ways of doing that so that it is possible for everyone to go. If anyone of any socioeconomic class to go to a religious private school, there should be methods for that to happen. But, you know, instead of, yeah, I also think that religious education should be limited to the church. You know? We need to learn about everything. And I feel like it is incumbent on the parents and the church to take care of the religious upbringing of a child, not the school system. And that injecting the church into school but that's also a very simplified view of it, because we're not injecting the church into the school. The churches were in the schools for a long time because in a lot of places that was the only way that education happened, was through the church. In a lot of communities in this country, that's how that happened. For a lot of people, the only way they learned how to read was by reading the Bible. And so, removing church from school sort of denies that experience. And I think denying that experience is not a healthy thing for us to do. Denying that happened is really dumb. And denying that it has shaped our world is also not safe. And we do need to appreciate that. But it is a dangerous and fine line to walk. And I will say also, I feel like, you know, if we do put Christian religion in school, if we allow it in school, we need to allow for other religions as well. And not just the big three, not just Christianity and Judaism and Muslim, but also all the rest of them, all the way down to mine. You know, the denial of my essential belief system throughout my school career and being treated as if I were not just other, but extremely other during my school career. Treated crazy. Treated like, oh, you really believe that? Well, you're crazy, and you may not want to say that to people because you will be treated as crazy. Meanwhile, I was, even in my independent, private, non-religious school, I was forced to learn about, not just learn about, but learn the Bible. We did, I think we did a whole semester on the Bible in high school English class. It was a lot, and I felt very uncomfortable during that. Gave me an appreciation for the Bible that I didn't have before, granted, but it didn't make me feel comfortable or safe. And there were certainly many times during that where those feelings were laughed off by other students. And the teacher had a hard time taking it seriously. To the point where I did a research project about how... I did a huge research project my sophomore year about how Christians hunted down and burned witches. A sort of like, okay, you think... It's like, you don't see how this could make me uncomfortable? Well, here's how this could make me uncomfortable. And I'm still not sure that they got it. I have grown as a person since then, and I've learned that not everybody I've learned that no group is a monolith. Yeah, that's what I'll go with. I've learned that no group is a monolith. All right.
Another not-so-subtle reinforcement of the increasingly popular idea that parents know best no matter what. A reminder that 20% of these parents can't read. And on the subject of parents, these days, parents tend to be either way too involved in their kids' educations or completely checked out. On the overbearing end of the spectrum are the helicopter parents. They've been empowered by online portals and made a habit of combing through every syllabus, reading assignment, and test score. Stop emailing your daughter's English teacher at 11 o'clock at night just because she posted a grade you had thoughts about. Okay, Denise? But grade grubbing is a predictable side effect of a college-centric educational system where A's have become a currency that can be exchanged for a successful future in a world where kids aren't guaranteed to outperform their parents. Grades themselves are more important than the mastery they're supposed to represent. And many parents believe their precious crotch goblins are entitled to top marks just for showing up. I mean, remember the Varsity Blues college tuition scandal? Parents are literally willing to break the law to get their mediocre kids into higher ed. Then there are the politicized parents. They're maybe less concerned about the grade than the content, but have just as much to say. They tend to believe that the entire school system should adhere to their personal beliefs, whether that means banning inclusive books or whitewashing history to skip all the racist parts. These parents are...
That is me, but on the other side of that spectrum. I believe that they should add a true color filter to how they teach history. When I was growing up, it wasn't critical race theory. It was called history. I'm just saying, like, and I do realize that my education was a lot more progressive than other people's, especially in my area, but I think I'm trying to think of I we yeah. I will say my teacher, my history teacher in high school, when somebody asked about the Tulsa race riot, my teacher said, I'm really not supposed to talk about that, but if I weren't not supposed to talk about that and I were to talk about it, what I would say is that a bunch of white people got really jealous of black people having money, commerce, income, and a society, and the white people. And what I would also point out, if I were allowed to talk about this, is that the white people were the ones who did the awful things, but I'm not allowed to talk about it, so I didn't say any of that. So that was kind of the teacher, that was the kind of teacher that we had at my high school. That was the kind of history teacher that we had at my high school. She was aware that this was a thing that was being systematically taken out of history, and she wanted to make sure that we knew, but she knew also what was allowed and not allowed by the state. And so it was a very she tread a very thin line of not being propagandistic while still teaching the truth. You know, we were definitely taught that the Civil War was about slavery. We were taught that, Lincoln was the great emancipator, but she was also like, well, but he was also, there were some problems. And then she pointed out that he was a Republican, and we had to have a long talk in class about how the parties have shifted over the years, and how racist Dixiecrats were, especially in the Jim Crow construction era South. So there was a lot of, there was... What I was taught, though, was also very different from what students in public school were taught. And I still hear public school kids refer to the Civil War as the War of Northern Aggression. Not kids in public school now, although I wouldn't be surprised, but people my age who came through the public school system, especially of a type, refer to it as the War of Northern Aggression. Which is a dog whistle, by the way. That is a dog whistle for bad racism. If you hear that, be wary. Be very, very wary. It's... yeah. Alright, back back to the.
particularly likely to pull their kids out of the public school system, and thousands of them have since the pandemic.
Introducing the all-new Buick Enclave with premium details throughout and room to bring everything.
According to the Washington Post, homeschooling is now the fastest growing form of education in the U.S., and rates have increased across race groups and ethnicities. Families value the opportunity to decide exactly who and what their children are exposed to. There are also families whose kids have developmental disabilities that choose homeschooling because schools can't always provide their kids with the services that best suit their needs. 15% of all students have disabilities that qualify them for individualized education plans, or IEPs. Yet in 2022, 65% of U.S. public schools reported being understaffed in special education, and more than 78% reported difficulty in hiring special ed staff. And I'm not necessarily saying homeschooling is the wrong option here, but it certainly is for the parents who cannot read and the ones who are more concerned about indoctrinating their children with the right version of information than they are with their child's long-term personal and mental development. Finally, on the disengaged end of the parenting spectrum, there are some parents with what we'll call legitimate excuses.
She makes her point well. Cannot read. Ah. Yep. See, that's what happens when the teacher catches you, like, drifting off in class. Got it, man. Concentrate, Trev. Did you forget to take your Ritalin, man? Concentrate.
Maybe they're working multiple jobs, dealing with health issues, single parenting, or some other scenario that genuinely leaves them with no bandwidth to spare on policing their child's education. As you might imagine, there have been even more legitimate excuses than usual since COVID, and I'm not here to demonize people who are struggling despite doing their best. I will, however, relish in shaming the disengaged parents who could be more involved in their kids' education but just don't want to. They tend to think of themselves as customers instead of partners with their child's school. They're likely to say things to teachers like, "My taxes pay your salary," and "How could you be overworked when you get summers off?" These parents don't want to check their kids' backpack or help with their homework or read to them at night because, quite frankly, they don't appreciate being told what to do, and their resistance to modifying their own behavior often rubs off on their kids as well. Schools are desperate to get parents back on their team. According to the CDC, research shows that parent engagement in schools is closely linked to better student behavior, higher academic achievement, and enhanced social skills. And as the Harvard Graduate School of Education recently reported, schools with robust family engagement had significantly lower rates of chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism, also known as truancy, describes students who miss 10% or more of the school year, about 18 days or a little more than 3 weeks. Chronic absenteeism has emerged as a leading factor hindering the country's recovery from pandemic learning losses. Not only can the absent kids not learn when they aren't in school, their absences also disrupt students who do show up. Teachers struggle to keep their students on the same page, and students who see their peers treating class as optional are more likely to take the same approach. One study found that when 10% of a student's classmates are absent on a given day, the student who is present is significantly more likely to skip school the following day. Attendance numbers are improving, but not fast enough to recover all the lost ground. Recent counts estimate chronic absenteeism rates remain
We covered this last year at some point. Not specifically the attendance problems, but we covered the loss of control that the teachers have over the students and how this just sort of snowballs out of control when I believe it was either CHS or Albemarle High School. I think it was CHS. The students just took over the school. When the teachers said, "We're not coming into work. It's not safe for us to go into work." The students have seized control of the school and they're there. And it was a several day occurrence. Some of it was a teacher strike, I guess. Some of it was, I feel like, student protest. But it wasn't an organized student protest. It was just the students saying, this just isn't a thing. Like, this is not gonna go. This is not okay. Whatever is going on here isn't okay. But because they're kids, they don't have any, especially because they're probably not very well educated, they have no tools from education, they have no tools to channel their feelings and thoughts, the ideas that they want to be like, these are the problems. They don't have the tools to point that out. So it's now I'm speaking from such a level of remove that I think it would be definitely honest to say I don't really know what I'm talking about. People be texting me while I'm working. All right. Let's get back to the video, eh?
75% higher than they were before the pandemic. Experts interpret this to mean that habits and norms around school attendance have been severely disrupted. To put it simply, for many families, the relationship with school has become optional. The habit of daily attendance, as well as the trust of many families, was shattered during the COVID closures. Remote and hybrid learning, relaxed grading and attendance policies, and the social mandate to keep kids home at the slightest sign of illness rewrote our expectations around school. And today, since many teachers are still required to post coursework online, families incorrectly believe that students are keeping up even when they aren't showing up. The root causes of chronic absenteeism are vast. Poverty, illness, a lack of childcare and social services, transportation challenges, and the youth mental health crisis have all contributed to the problem. Chronic absenteeism often leads to learning loss, which creates anxiety, which generates avoidance, which leads to absences and more learning loss. Studies show that poor attendance influences whether a student is able to read proficiently by the end of third grade. For ninth graders, each week of absences per semester is connected to a more than 20 percentage point decline in the probability of graduating from high school. The legal term truancy has been largely abandoned because experts agree that punitive responses to chronic absences only cause further damage to the...
I skipped a total of 1.5 periods in high school. In not just high school, but middle school through high school. Even in elementary school, I didn't skip school. But in elementary school, I was not smart enough to skip school. And I skipped 1.5 periods. And by the time I tried to sneak into school, like, the school and my mom had already been on the phone and were about to call cops to start looking for me. And it's not because my mom was exceptionally engaged in my education like that or anything. It was because the school noticed I was missing and they were worried about me. Granted, I also had been in several car accidents by this point in my high school career. And so, me not showing up on time, in retrospect, was a valid worry. It's like, oh God, he's hit something again. And actually, no, at that point, it wasn't that... Well, anyway. It was... I could see why they would worry, and when I realized that, I was like, oh, well, no wonder. I'm just not going to get away with this, am I? This is too small a school, and I have too much of a reputation. And that was the beginning of me realizing that I needed to be in larger environments. I needed to be in a city. I needed to be in bigger places with more people so I could just disappear. I did skip senior skip day. I went to senior skip day. I specifically went to I did the thing I was supposed to do on senior skip day. I followed the rules. You know, it's not a good way to get kids to follow rules, but one way to make people follow rules is to catch them every time they break the rules. I never got away with anything, ever. I was that rare combination of unlucky and clueless that got me caught for everything. Everything. So I just, like, at some point, just stopped trying to do anything wrong. Until I hit my, like, 20s. And I found myself in larger environments with more people and realized I could disappear and get away with shit. And then I did. But even then, I am that rare breed of unlucky that I've gotten caught for it so many times. You know? Like... just... yeah. Let's get back to the video, because we're not even at the wrestler's daughter yet.
The relationship between students, families, and schools. Instead of having parents jailed for failing to get their kids to school, districts have been experimenting with alternative methods to reduce chronic absenteeism, including laundry rooms at school to accommodate students who are embarrassed to show up in unwashed clothes, pairing each chronically absent student with an adult mentor at school, providing free breakfast, and more. Private companies have also popped up to bridge the gap, deploying the gentlest possible version of truancy officers to check in on families and work with them to create and enact plans that will get their kids back in the classroom.
Have they considered starting school an hour later?
It turns out that even after they're in the door, getting them to sit down, shut up, and actually learn something can feel like going into battle. In 2023, more than 70% of educators reported that students are misbehaving more now than they did before the pandemic. The kids are not all right. Sure. And honestly, if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't be either. Growing up sucks. Your brain doesn't work right yet. It's mostly mush. Your body won't stop changing. You're trying to figure out social norms and who you are as a person, and how you're constantly being told what to do. Now add social media. On TikTok, you can go from a video about how the world is burning, another of a celebrity you'll never measure up to, and another of the cutest animal you've ever seen in the span of 3 minutes, and then you do that over and over and over again for hours. The human mind was not meant to comprehend, let alone the undeveloped adolescent mind. The average teen in the US spends over 8 hours looking at screens for entertainment every day. This doesn't include the time they look at screens in the classroom for learning purposes. 8 hours on TikTok, on Instagram, on video games, watching TV. Imagine having that level of constant stimulation before your brain is even fully formed. It was hard enough making it through the pandemic lockdowns
badmouth my job, please.
Frontal lobe. I cannot imagine
I don't disagree with you, but don't badmouth my job,
overnight.
please.
I think in hindsight, it's tempting to brush over the profound confusion and anxiety and frankly trauma of those years and just talk about this sourdough craze or laugh about how many boxes of wine we went through, haha. But let's not forget how
That's
it
not
broke
funny.
a lot of us. By March 2023, more than 1 million people in the US had died from COVID. More than 47 million Americans voluntarily quit their jobs during the Great Resignation. Nothing puts your limited time on Earth into perspective like a global pandemic, you know?
Right.
Many of us were forced to come to terms with how little regard our jobs had for our well-being and our fulfillment and reevaluated our priorities. Students were doing the same calculations, they just didn't have the freedom to make their own choices nor the reasoning skills to fully process what was happening. Instead, they were forced to keep working through the pandemic, even when it felt like a joke, and all while they saw their families, friends, and teachers being actively traumatized on a daily basis. When schools reopened, kids were expected to return to business as usual, just like the grown-ups, but the kids are not coping well. According to the 2022 National Healthcare Quality and Disparities Report,
adults aren't coping well either.
1 in 5 of young people in the U.S. between the ages of 3 and 17 had a mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder. In 2024, nearly half, 48% of students, reported that depression, anxiety, and stress were making it difficult for them to succeed in school. Half. And like, I get it. The main thing that got me through high school, despite some spicy childhood trauma and undiagnosed anxiety and ADHD, was the promise that getting into a good college would allow me to get the out of my hometown and build a better life for myself. But now that the social contract around college and career have started breaking down, the old carrots aren't as motivating. College enrollment peaked in 2010, the year I entered undergrad.
You know, I saw this trend back in the late 90s when I graduated high school and started college and failed out and started college and failed out. I saw this. I was realizing that how expensive college was and how how I wasn't going to be guaranteed that to do better. The mind reeling trauma of the pandemic is something. Oh, hey Shende. Yeah, it is. It is ridiculously expensive, and honestly, I have to say that I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad I didn't do it. You know, I'm glad I dipped out of college, failed out of college. Let's not pretend that I had any choice in the matter. Let's be honest about this. I failed out. I didn't leave willingly. I saw how much money I was going to be wasting just trying to stay in college, and I was like, nope. Not worth it. So, but this, what she's talking about here, this disillusionment around like where you're supposed to go after high school, like it does kind of make you ask, well, why am I doing this? Like, I could see why high school students would be like, why, nah, seriously, why am I doing this? Like, you know, college is, I don't need board scores because colleges aren't going to take me, you know, because I'm just not going to do that. Or not even that colleges won't take them, but like that they're not going to waste that money on college. Instead, they're just going to go out into the real world and get a job and start making money, you know? And by the way, making money is still a pretty loose term for it. They're going to start trying to make money. Like, wage growth has been happening, and wages are going up, and going up at a greater rate than they were, even. So it's a little better than it was, but wage growth still hasn't met inflation. And so the incentive to put off getting a job that might pay you more is, put off getting a job so that you can get an education and get a better paying job. That incentive is negated, not even mitigated, but negated, if not inverted, by the cost of the education and how long you're going to spend trying to pay for it. And then get told they can't get a job because they don't have a piece of paper or the necessary skills. Yeah, exactly. Like, so it is, and I've seen my experience with kids coming out of high school over the last few years. Maybe I don't have a good idea about a lot of them. I know that the kids that I've seen graduate recently were highly motivated, high achieving people in general. So I don't think that that's, a great cross section of the youth. I'm pretty sure most of them aren't that. But yeah, I don't know what to make of it just yet. I know that a few years ago, at the beginning of iGen, the kids I saw graduating high school who were the beginning of iGen, they were doing things like getting jobs right out of high school, or getting jobs while they were still in high school, and building internet careers in all kinds of ways. Most of the ones I knew are coders, and building internet career around coding. Some of them, I'm sure that's not a universal thing. I'm sure there are other, but building some sort of internet career, as well as getting a regular day job. A lot of it's unkind of me to put it this way, but a lot of the counties around here produce the people who work at the fast food places, the gas stations, and the grocery stores in the wider area. And it's not kind, but it's true. And again, I think it's a failing on the part of the schools, not a failing on the part of the people. We're going to go ahead and let this ad play. And then when we get back from ads, we're going to continue on this video. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you all how you know which school system someone came from. If they're working at the fast food restaurant, chances are they came out of Orange County. If they're working at the gas station, chances are they came out of Louisa County, y'all. Which is, by the way, where I was born. And I had a long career in gas station convenience stores, so I fit the mold. And I lived briefly in Orange County and had a brief career. Well, not lived briefly. I went briefly to Orange County schools and had a brief career in fast food. Albemarle and Charlottesville. Wow. Yeah. Albemarle, Charlottesville, and the associated private schools of the area tend to produce the kitchen staff. Kitchen and wait staff for the larger food service industry. This all being said, there are, of course, transcendent, exceptional people who manage to get out of these awful, awful stereotypes that I'm putting on them. And if you have your car getting worked on by somebody, chances are they came from Greene County. It's just, I mean, it's just the way I've seen it break down. It's what I think that these schools are specifically training their students for. Like, and it's a little disheartening that they've given up on producing exceptional students, on trying to produce an exceptional education program. You know, those sort of tragic circumstances are comedy gold for people like me. It's probably not great. All right, back to the video.
And ever since then, the narrative around the American dream has been unraveling. This includes crushing student debt, the elusiveness of homeownership, and the waning relevance of a four-year degree. And not to give the guy too much credit, but I can't help suspecting that the rise of Donald Trump has sent a really terrible message about the value of hard work generally. If a scammer and a bully who may not even be able to read real good can become president of the United States twice, why would you bother finishing Catcher in the Rye? And the value of education has been undermined, not only by the decades-long conservative assault on public schools and expertise, but by the
says a lot about me. It says a lot about me as a person, but I loved Catcher in the Rye. I read it. I'd already read it twice by the time we had to read it for high school. I was fully ready for this. I was ready for Catcher in the Rye. And there were maybe 3 questions about it on the test. It's like, oh, come on. Come on.
conservative example that these things do not matter. Not to mention the other conservative policies that have made wage growth stagnant and the wealth gap ever larger. Why would I work hard to go to college when the likelihood that I'll ever make a livable wage and buy a house and do all the things wrapped up in the American dream is low even with a college degree? And now that Trump got a second term with multiple felony convictions, that message should be considered the national standard. Just like Ronald Reagan before him, President-elect Trump wants to eliminate the Department of Education, which Project 2025's mandate for leadership describes as a convenient one-stop shop for the woke education cartel. Schools should be responsive to parents rather than to leftist advocates intent on indoctrination. And the more the federal government is involved in education, the less responsive to parents the public schools will be. This department is an example of federal intrusion into a traditional state and local realm. For the sake of American children, Congress should shutter it and return control of education to the states. In truth, state and local governments are already in charge of education. They provide around 90% of the funding and set most of the rules. The Federal Department of Education doesn't get to dictate curriculum or shape most school policies. What it does do is administer federal grant programs, including the $18 billion Title I program that funds high-poverty K-12 schools, the $15 billion program that helps cover the cost of education for students with disabilities, and a $1.6 trillion federal student loan program which sets rules for what colleges must do to participate. The department also collects statistical data and enforces civil rights laws like the ones stopping schools from discriminating against students for their gender identity. So the reality is that, once again, conservatives have identified a problem, our schools are failing our children, and then swerved completely off the cliff with the solution. State and local governments already form the backbone of the education system, and the system is failing. Removing federal funding that mostly goes to the most vulnerable students will not suddenly make the schools more responsive to parents. Parents, 20% of whom, I'll remind you, cannot read. It's unclear whether Trump and his nominated Education Secretary Linda McMahon would have the ability to fully get rid of the Department of Education. Experts are
I was
positing
right,
that
it
instead
is
the
Linda
department would be used
McMahon.
to funnel more money into school choice, meaning voucher programs that give away federal dollars to be used on private, for-profit institutions or loosely regulated homeschools. McMahon's experience with education is minuscule. She served for 1 year on the Connecticut Board of Education after lying about
Betsy DeVos was the other one that is the other. I feel like the only difference between Linda McMahon and Betsy DeVos is that DeVos's family, the DeVos family name, is already associated with problematic ideas around schooling, I believe. That there's something in there that's now I have to check my history, because while I might have been making jokes about DeVos and her family's problems, I guess 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I forgot what they were. See, this is why I used to write scripts, was so that I could go back and go, oh yeah, see, I was making these jokes about DeVos. Unfortunately, at the time, I was literally handwriting the scripts on notebook paper, and a lot of that notebook paper has just kind of gone poof. So, but yeah, I expect much the same from McMahon as we got from DeVos, which is, again, unschooling, homeschooling, charter schooling, and religious schooling over any sort of public schooling. And this is another place where I feel like the current Republican Party behaves more like Jedi than like Sith. The Jedi wanted a lot of funding for their little private religious schools. But the Galactic Empire was trying to build public schooling for everyone. Public schooling that would provide everyone with the basic education that they needed to be a productive member of the Galactic Empire. I trust not the Jedi who says only the Sith deal in absolutes.
having a degree in education. She has voiced support for school vouchers, and as a multi-million-dollar donor to Trump's campaigns throughout the years, her position as a staunch loyalist with zero actual experience or expertise means she'll just be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump, moving forward with whatever he and his cronies behind the scenes want to happen in the Department of Education. And for all their screaming and crying about protecting children, the Republicans' big shiny plan for schools will do nothing but drive away even more qualified teachers and hurt our students and all of our futures in the process. Because even if you don't have kids, that illiterate 10th grader may one day be changing your colostomy bag. Might be worth an investment today to avoid that unsettling future, don't you think? So this Christmas, check in on the teachers and students in your life. Also, vote in progressive state, local, and school board members who care more about the long-term development and well-being of students than they do about indoctrinating them with a specific ideology. It's true what they say, that children are our future and it takes a village. And right now, the future looks bleak and the village is failing. If you're interested in ad-free,
takes a
uncensored
village
access
to
all these
vote
episodes,
for an
more
idiot.
about money and politics, eating the rich, building class solidarity, etc., I invite you to join me over on Patreon, where we're planning some initiatives to help build community in Trump's America. Go to patreon.com/Legia Miller to join. Thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, RHT, Latranger Lucas, Joshua Cole, Thomas
Because
Johnson,
I
Anthony Giles,
used
Tay, and
her
Brett Pianta.
video,
Your generosity makes this channel what it is, so thank you.
I'm
If you
leaving
like this
in
video, you
all
might
of
also like the
this.
one I made about how conservatives are sabotaging our public
Because,
schools. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
you know, I think supporting her is a great idea. Go and watching her video is a good idea. She's really good at this. So yeah. Shende says, I feel like I should go back and watch Star Wars. You know, yeah. The original trilogy leaves a lot of stuff up in the air. And you don't really understand the inner workings of the Jedi until the Clone Wars. And the cartoons do a wonderful job of putting that into perspective. You know, you watch the cartoons from the side of the Jedi. You know, of course you do. We're all rooting for the good guys, for the Jedi. We always, especially, you know, Grievous and Dooku were very hateable villains. They were good to hate as villains. And Darth Maul, as you get to know him through the cartoons, he's a relatable villain at the very least. You find yourself, I found myself reinforced in my love for a flawed person in Darth Maul. And I felt like they treated him very well. He was not a good person. There's no way to look at Darth Maul and go, he was a good guy. There was no part of him that was redeemable. But that didn't mean that I didn't love him. My love for Obi-Wan is also rewarded. I feel like, you know, and as my love for Obi-Wan as a flawed individual, because he is, you can see it. You can really see it. And I feel like the cartoons did a good job of making Anakin less of the treacly, insipid, no, not treacly, insipid, just insipid, but drippy, wet adolescent that he was in the movies. In the first two movies, Anakin was, I did not like him in the movies, man. He was the worst part of the movies for me. He did well. They did well in the third one. And there were parts of the first one that I liked. And there was a decent amount of the second one that I liked. I'm not one to hate on Star Wars ever. Even this most recent trilogy, this 9 movies. I have a lot about it that I like. And a few things that I'm not wild about. And most of the things I'm not wild about happened in the first movie. Most of it was that first movie. The cartoons, though, really hit home. And while they were a kids show, they weren't. And they spoke to a lot of they included a lot of the political. They included analogies for a lot of the political armed conflicts that the United States was involved in the 80s and 90s. I saw a lot of looking back at and questioning the presumed moralism of the American military complex. And having grown up as a radical deviant and looking questioningly at the American military complex suspiciously, I saw a lot of stuff that made me feel on point with that, with those cartoons. Felt good. Plus, they do a great job of giving even more humanity to the droids, especially R2-D2, beloved droid. But also they really show you how the Jedi are a bunch of lying, kid-stealing, meddling, If you look closely, the Jedi are not good guys. Jedi aren't doing good things. They're doing self-preservational things. And as a result, I never trusted the Jedi. But they sure did write them in a way that now justifies my lack of trust in them. And at the basic level, let's start at the very basic level here. The Galactic Senate was this huge, decentralized, states' rights sort of government that allowed for slavery. Usually off in the corners, out of sight. But it was very not centralized government. It's almost neoliberal about human rights, person rights, and actually no, they were complicit in slavery, and that's what the plight of the droid is about. I keep forgetting that the droids were there to represent, specifically R2 and 3PO were there to represent the slave class of ancient Japan. But they were, the Jedi and the old Galactic Republic was very decentralized government. Taxation was very much left to the, to the world, to the system, and to the, and paying for government was left to borrowing from the banking clans, basically. Which I'm sure if I dug deep enough, I could figure out their economic system, but I'm going to leave that alone for the moment. The Galactic Empire is a giant centralized... I should have snoozed that. Giant centralized government, which is trying to provide for the common welfare of the entire galaxy. They were trying to put in place a galactic school system. They were trying to put in place they were trying to put together a new deal, as it were, where government spending built jobs. Granted, those jobs were building war machines, but hey. So they were way more like the progressive Democrats. I'll finish this thought when we get back from ad break. I can't believe I'm perpetuating this one. Although, yeah, I kinda can. I kinda can. Alright. So what I was saying was the Jedi are not the Jedi. The Galactic Empire is a very centralized government, large centralized government that's providing for the common welfare and common good of all of the galaxy, trying to put in place a public school system, trying to provide jobs, building war machines. But they're jobs conquering, but they're jobs. And the other thing that Darth Vader's galactic empire was trying to do was end slavery of all types. That was a leftover from Anakin. I think that I don't think they delve too deeply into the idea that, although I'm not sure, I haven't watched any of the new stuff, any of the newer media, but I'd like for them to touch on how the droids were treated, because that's the true measure of how progressive any of these galactic societies are going to be, is how they treat the droids. If they treat the droids as people, then they are a progressive galactic society. Otherwise, ultimately, they're still in favor of some form of slavery. As much as I like Vader, I think I like D2 more. Just saying. So yeah, that's my political dissection of Star Wars. Something that I obviously have passions about, but I'm also aware that it's a completely fictional thing, which makes it interesting to me for me to be looking at these kinds of morals to be taken out of it, because that implies a certain state of mind of the people who created it. And that means if I can read this message into it and back this argument up this way, I feel like it means that the people who created this may have to some degree seen the same possibilities in these analogies. Now, do I think that they'll say that? No. Because that would be, again, they're a business. I am not. We are an entertainment channel. They are in the business of making those products as consumable to mass audiences as possible. I do think that it's telling about society what we see as the good and the bad. And it's telling about society as what we choose to see ourselves as. I have tried to remove myself from applying labels like good or bad, nice or mean, strong or weak to myself. I think that defining myself in those terms narrows the scope of how I can see myself. I do things that a strong person might do. I do things that show strength. But I also do things that show weakness. I do things that show a strength of willpower. But I also do things that show a distinct lack of that self-same willpower. I try to be kind and nice, and I try to spread positivity in the world. But that doesn't mean that I am always like that, or that is always the Trevor that you'll get. I define myself as a comic or a comedian because I find humor in almost everything. But I don't call myself funny. Actually, I do, because I make me laugh all the time. I don't expect other people to call me funny. I don't, when people ask me if I'm funny, I'm you know, I think there's more value for me in the behaviors that I choose to perform, the behaviors that I choose to perform, and describing them. Am I performing something am I performing funny? Am I performing kindness? Some of this is around nice guy, this whole nice guy syndrome, and the dangers of that, of the nice guys out there. Because I want to be seen as a nice person. I have the desire to be a kind person, a good person, a nice person. And the desire's out there to be like, yeah, but I'm a nice guy. But if I have to convince somebody that I'm a nice guy, I'm probably not. But also, I'm not always a nice person. I can be exceptionally cruel and hurtful and not even feel bad about it. There are individuals out there who I could quite easily say just awful things to and be okay with it because I don't like them. Granted that they're individuals. And even if I don't like them, they are people who draw breath and are worthy of some small, basic level of respect and love. But that doesn't mean I gotta be nice to them. And there are times when I've just been, and for no reason too, I've just been super mean to somebody. And just turned around. Wasn't anything, they just struck me the wrong way. I turned around, looked at him, and I was like, I'm gonna make your day awful. And I've said something to them that just wrecked them. I told somebody that, no, I'm not gonna say what I said. It's unkind. It was unkind. And the thing is their frosted tips didn't look that bad. It was just, I was on a mean streak that day and just said that it, not gonna say what I said it looked like. Whatever your imagination comes up with, we'll go with that. Because I still feel bad about it. Like, yeah, the guy wasn't a great guy or anything. Not a kind of a jerk. But he didn't deserve that level of cruelty that early in the morning. Just why, Trev? Why'd you do it? Why, man? Why? So I can't, and that's why I can't honestly say that I'm a nice guy, is because I have been quite cruel And there are people out there who will say that I am not a nice guy, that I am an awful person. So I'm not going to go calling myself a nice guy. And when I realized that one in particular, when it was the nice guy one, I realized that maybe I don't want to be responsible for defining myself in those ways. Maybe the way I define myself needs to be more to my own core, more about who I am at my heart, which is what behaviors do I choose to exhibit? And do I choose to exhibit behaviors that are in accordance with how I want to be at my heart? And that's the thing about being a good person, making the decision to be a good person, is when doing magic, when casting spells, there is an aspect of it called intent. And part of intent means acting with intent outside of casting your spell. Means acting with intent before you cast your spell, while you're casting your spell, and after you cast your spell. Act as if what you are trying to make come true could come true. And if your intent is to approach the world with goodness, and if your intent is to make the world a more good place, then act as if. Be that good change you want to see in the world. If you want to be a better person at heart, act as if. Be that person. When it comes time to make the decision, make that decision. Make the good decision. It may not be easy, but it's good. Make the decision to, when it comes time, make the decision to be good. Now, that is a very oversimplified and privileged view of this. But it is also it's also sort of how I live my life. That acting with intent, that mindfulness, being mindful of how I interact with the world. The natural world around me, the energies here in my space, as well as those out there in my garden and in my home, the people around me. I am the person that I want to be. And I am good with that. I've accepted the parts of me that I love and like. And the parts of me that were not good, the parts of me that I didn't like, I first had to embrace and understand before I could change. But I changed them through hard internal work. Now, I do kind of like that I can be mean still, and I don't want to lose that talent. But I don't want violence to be my first choice every time. Violence of word, violence of deed. I don't want any form of violence anymore to be my first choice. Right, Crystal. I try to be who I want others to be to me. Yes, and it is, in a lot of ways, it's taking the golden rule and extrapolating. It's also understanding that others aren't going to do unto me as I would do unto them. It's accepting that. I've accepted that people who live life this way need to be careful to not get taken advantage of. Because it is very easy to take advantage of people who are just trying to be the best. Not like the best, but trying to spread goodness in the world. And when I say goodness, I feel like we should define this term as well. This means, love and acceptance. This means empathy, as well as solidarity. This means equality. Goodness means, it's a lot of things. Goodness means a lot of things. Good in the world means a lot of things. And it's really hard to define. Joy, pleasure, learning. These are all good things. Learning sometimes comes at the cost of joy and pleasure, but it's for the greater good of learning. I struggle with some of these finer points of these definitions sometimes, and I think we all probably do. But that doesn't mean that in a moment, when the decision comes time to be made, that I can't look at the decision and try to think about what I'm doing. Try to think about the positive effect it could have, as well as the negative effect it could have. And trying to do the greatest good for the most people. Understanding that the needs of the many often outweigh the needs of the few or the needs of the one. It was very Vulcan of me, very Star Trek there. Sorry, very Mr. Spock there for a moment, With that, I think it's probably about time for me to sign off anyway. Thank you guys for joining me. Just Me Crystal, Shende20. Thank you guys. Much love to you, Crystal, too. Always. Stick around for the raid. Now is the time on the show when I say, as they say around here, 2 up, 2 down. VA, double deuces. We're out, y'all.